Hello, my name is Jackie Geringer McDermott, and we are recording live from the English Valleys History Center in North English, Iowa. It is January 4th, 2025. This diary or journal was written by my great-great-aunt, Mary Elizabeth Claypool Wade, who was known as Libby Wade. Here is a picture of Libby, down here in this corner. She was my grandmother's aunt and the matriarch of our very, very large family. Libby lived a half a block east of Main Street in a little house on Oak Street in North English, Iowa, until near the end of her life in 1959. She was 71 years old in 1946. I don't remember her, but she knew me as a baby. Downtown North English was also the center of my life as I grew up. I would like to introduce you, page by page, to the cast of characters from North English, Iowa, and the surrounding English Valleys area. March 15th, 1946. Heavy fog this morning. Flowers coming up. Sent Mr. and Mrs. Butler a card. Their anniversary is tomorrow. Russell began 11 o'clock dinner today. He has the noon hour at HLCO. Mr. Cram brought us some parsnips. Mary R. was here. Bought eggs at 25 cents. I found an article on the people she sent the card to. It was Mr. and Mrs. Lafayette Butler. Lafayette W. and Mabel Post Butler were having their 60th wedding anniversary tomorrow. Mabel was the sister of longtime North English jeweler and optometrist Clyde Post. The Butlers were married in North English in 1886 and then left to live in Kansas where they were school teachers. They later came back to North English in 1895 and then later moved to Varina where he had a furniture and undertaking business, and then to Central City where he was Justice of the Peace before coming home to North English. Their 4 sons were Clyde, Archie, Glenn, and George Butler. Lafayette and Mabel were 87 and 81 years old respectively in 1946. Mabel lived to be almost 100 years old, passing away in 1964 as the oldest person in North English at that time. Back to the diaries. Russell, her son, who was 38 years old in 1946, lives in the house with her and likely comes home for lunch each workday. And there's a picture of Russell. He's now coming home at 11 since he works over the noon hour at the Home Lumber Company, which is just a half a block away from home. Mr. Cram that bought her the parsnips is my classmate Myrna's great-grandfather. I Googled about parsnips, and it says parsnips can be left in the ground over winter and will gradually improve in sweetness and in flavor. And Mary Regsiger that she talks about all the time is the younger person in this picture, and that's her friend in the neighborhood egg lady. March 16th, 1946. Still rainy, just drizzle. Shirley Barneses are selling their household goods. Bought a gallon of vinegar at 48 cents. Scarce. Jenny was here, is having trouble with her back. Heavy clouds, nearly dark at 4:30. Shirley Barnes was a man's name. I've seen that name before. They lived on Smoky Row or East Washington Street, and they were moving away from town. And Jenny Wade is her daughter-in-law, Libby's daughter-in-law. She's the wife of her oldest son, Wayne. March 16th, 1946. Mild, foggy, cleared in the PM. Lena was here a while. Russell went to South English to see John Tressler in the forenoon. I'm reading Magnificent Obsession. Rainy tonight. Hattie was over. Anna's birthday, 41. Lena was her daughter-in-law, the wife of second son Warren or Mike Wade. Hattie was her friend and neighbor, Hattie Killian. And Anna was Libby's 41-year-old married daughter who lived in Texas. March 18th, 1946. Nice out today. I went to Wayne's in the PM. Jenny is better. Belva has rooms fitted up there. Lita is not so well. Glenn Cobb called home from Boston. He has been in Cuba. Wayne is Libby's oldest son, who lives a block south of her on East Clark Street. Wayne, or Perky Wade, and his wife Jenny continued to live in this same house for many years. Jenny is Wade's wife, Libby's daughter-in-law. Belva Yoss is their oldest daughter. Here's a picture of Belva. She is married to Don Yoss, who has just arrived back home from the service. She is expecting her first child, Mick Yoss, later this year. It sounds like they will be living at Perky and Jenny's for now. Perky and Jenny's house is a big 2-story house, so I'm sure there's plenty of room there for everyone. Lita Lavelle, that's not so well, was her friend, who was, I found out last week, was Doris Reese's sister. Glenn Cobb is the husband of Hazel, the youngest daughter of Wayne and Jenny. He is in the service also. Here's a picture of Glenn and Hazel in their elderly years. They were big supporters of the community center here and also the history center. March 19th, 1946. Bright, nice day. Mamie Burkett cleaned wallpaper. The school went to Williamsburg for a music contest. Ruth Mall was here in the evening to sew. Mary R. was here also, and Martha Sears in the PM. She may go to California to Elizabeth. Mamie Burkett was a high school senior who had moved into town to live. Very shortly, she will be married to my Uncle Glenn Geringer, who has returned home from the Navy. I learned something new this week. Ruth Mall is the ex-wife of Libby's nephew, John Josiah Jack Mall Jr. I had reported previously that she was his widow, but he didn't die until 1952. They were divorced. Mary R. is Mary Regsager, her egg lady and friend. And I found I'm out of order here in my stuff. March 22, 1946. Lovely day. Alta Berry here in the PM. I was to go to booster class at Edith Long's, but Gertrude didn't get the car. Maud C. and Mrs. Newberry were here. Hope Hudson died at the Sigourney Hospital. And here's the picture of Alta Berry. She was Libby's sister-in-law, the sister of her husband, Bert Wade. Maud C. was Maud Claypool, the wife of Libby's nephew, Ray Claypool, and the mother of Amy Hervey from South English. Mrs. Newberry was Clara Newberry. She's on this side of this picture. She was a neighbor and church friend. Hope Hudson was Mrs. Charles Hudson, an old neighbor from the Green Valley area, and the grandmother of the Weingarten boys from South English. March 23rd, 1946. Dark and rainy. Mamie B. finished cleaning the kitchen walls, etc. Jenny was here a while. She'd been to Cedar Rapids with Walter in the truck. Hazel had a telegram from Glenn. They are to meet him tonight in Cedar Rapids. He has his discharge. Mamie Burkett is the young girl who has moved to town, who will soon marry my Uncle Glenn Geringer. Jenny is her daughter-in-law, the wife of Wayne or Perky Wade. Her son Walter, or Bud Wade, was newly home from the service. Many of the Wade men were truck drivers, so Jenny was taking a trip to Cedar Rapids with her son in his truck. I found a real nice picture of Perky and Jenny's family on Ancestry. Hazel Cobb is in the front row, and then Jenny and Perky. And up here on this side is Stub Wade, or Harold. And then Belva Yoss, Evelyn Kurtz, and Bud, or Walter Wade. Hazel Cobb is her married granddaughter, and Glenn Cobb is her husband who has just been discharged. I had forgotten about telegrams. They were a quick way to send a short message to somebody in another part of the country. I had skipped over on March 20th. When I was talking about, on March 19th, I was talking that Martha Sears had been there. She was the grandmother of Kathy O'Rourke from North English. She was the mother of Kathy's mother, Grace Sears Kaiser, and she had another daughter in California named Elizabeth Smith. I found an article on the music contest at the school when they went to Williamsburg. As a result of the local elimination contest at our school, will be represented in the annual music contest this year by the following people. And one of them was her granddaughter, Phyllis Wade. March 20th, 1946, another nice day. Verdi brought me a fringed peony root. Hazel was here a few minutes, and in the evening, Mary Newhouse, Hazel, Suzanne, and Jenny were here. I was terribly tired from all of yesterday's work. I didn't do much but visit this PM with Verdi. Verdi is her friend, Verdi Mahana McKinstry. As we will learn through the years, Libby had a great love of flowers, and a fringed peony would have been a rare flower to have. Mary Newhouse was a popular switchboard operator who was a friend of Libby's. She was a daughter of the Anthony Kellys and was raised 4 miles east of North English. She was Catholic and friends with Tress MacDonald. Mary Newhouse was the grandmother of Kelly Newhouse and his sisters Marcia and Muriel Newhouse, who attended English Valley schools. Hazel Cobb was her married granddaughter, and Jenny Wade is Hazel's mother, Libby's daughter-in-law, and Suzanne Kurtz is Jenny's granddaughter. It sounds like Libby worked right alongside Mamie Burkett cleaning the wallpaper yesterday. March 21st, 1946. Spring is here. Ruth Mall's birthday. Jenny brought me some parsnips. Hattie was here a few minutes. Toots and Veronica A. had a fight last night. A great time in our little city. John Barleycorn was mostly to blame. Ruth is the ex-wife of Libby's nephew, Jack Mall Jr. Jenny is her daughter-in-law. Perhaps parsnips were an early vegetable from the garden that we have learned can be even better if kept over the winter. As we continue on in the diaries, we'll see how the family loves to gather and enjoy fruits and vegetables that are in season, and can and preserve vegetables and fruits also. The people that Libby are talking about having the fight uptown last night are the newlywed Mr. and Mrs. Bernard Agnew, who have just recently opened the bar restaurant downtown, according to a newspaper article. Libby is saying that John Barleycorn or alcohol is to blame for the fight. Hattie was likely the source of that news. March 23rd, 1946, dark and rainy. Mamie B. finished cleaning the walls and the kitchen, etc. Jenny was here a while. She'd been to Cedar Rapids with Walter in the truck. And Hazel had the telegram from Glenn that he had his discharged. On March 24th, 1946, nice and sunshiny today. A little cooler. I'm about all in. Been doing a little too much, I guess. Lena was here. Also Bertha and the 3 boys, and Alonzo's baby Nancy, a year old, December 7th. And also Dorothy and Donna Ray, born February 5th. This is a picture of Lena, her daughter-in-law, the wife of her second son, Warner Mike Wade. Bertha was her niece, my grandmother, Bertha Geringer, and 3 of her boys were with her. This is a picture of my grandma, and her 3 smaller boys would have been probably with her that day. And her oldest grandchild, Nancy. This is Nancy. She was the daughter of Alonzo or Al Geringer and his wife Betty. And then Dorothy and Donna Ray. And Dorothy was my aunt, Dorothy Geringer, and her daughter Donna Ray was actually just born on March 7th. And she was my grandma and grandpa Geringer's second grandchild. I just saw Buck Gehringer at church at the Methodist Church in Watcher last Sunday, and he thanked me for my broadcast and mentioned that he is number 3 on the grandchild list and the oldest grandson. He will be born pretty soon in June of 1946. And yes, I looked ahead, and he did make it into the diary the day after he was born. Speaking of my Gehringer cousins, I didn't get a very good count on how many listened to my broadcast like I might thought. I know Buck and Donna both do, and David, and Stan, and Jan, and my brothers count too, Lou, Chip, Tom, and Gary. Lou is on my crew, and he's usually present for my live broadcasts. Give me some likes so I can tell that you're watching next time, Gehringer cousins. Oh, and while we're on the subject of my cousin Buck Gehringer, there's a neat picture I found of him in the high school on Ancestry.com. He's in the back row. Other people in this picture that we talk about on broadcasts include Becky Shaw, she's right there, who was born in an entry a few weeks ago. She is the granddaughter of John Josiah Jack Mall Jr., Libby's nephew. Carolyn Warner Elwood, who is on the History Center board, is in the front row. Ted Rogers, the future brother-in-law of Libby's oldest great-granddaughter, Suzanne Kurtz, when he marries her sister, Kathy Kurtz. He's up here in this row. And on this side is Glenn and Hazel Cobb's son, Bobby Cobb. Monday, March 25th, 1946. I worked a few pieces, dress, aprons, etc. Hope Hudson's funeral is at Champion Hill. I bought 3 chickens, put 2 in the locker. In addition to sewing, Libby likely does excellent embroidery work. I know that my grandma Bertha was very skilled in embroidery. I have a pair of booties that Aunt Lib gave me when I was born. I will have to look to see if they are crocheted or knitted. Hope Hudson was buried from the Champion Hill Church east of North English. Libby bought 3 chickens, 1 to fix immediately, and the other 2 were put in storage in the locker, which is a half a block west, in the last brick building on Main Street at the corner of Main Street and Oak Street. People did not have freezers in their homes in those days, but paid a small fee to store their items in the locker. March 26, 1946. Murray Hall Jr. got a fishing rod. Those here, Nell Miller and Alice Van Auken, church work. Hattie, Mary R., Lena, Jenny, Maud C., and Mamie B. Lodge tonight. Also a musical recital at the school. Several pupils have scarlet fever. Murray Hall Jr. was likely borrowing a fishing rod from Russell as he was an avid fisherman. Nell Miller was the wife of Elmer Miller, the longtime mayor of North English at that time. She was in the Calvin family, an aunt to Larry Calvin, the father of my friends Chuck, John, and Patty Calvin. She had been a teacher at one time and was highly involved in the church clubs. Alice Van Auken was the great-grandmother of my friend Kathy Netzer and her brothers Lynn and Jim Morrison. Hattie Killian was Libby's neighbor from church and lodge, and Mary Rakesegger was her egg lady and friend. Lena was her daughter-in-law, as is Jenny, and Maud Claypool was the nephew, Ray Claypool's wife, and Mamie B was the wife of soon-to-be wife of her great-nephew, Glenn Gehringer. I found an article on the recital at the school, and I thought it was really interesting. I found it in the newspaper, and it says, musical program to be given at the auditorium on March 26th and 27th. Alfred Brainerd, the musical director in the local schools, will present his pupils in a musical program next Tuesday evening, March 26th, and Wednesday evening, March 27th. The program for both evenings will be held in the high school auditorium, which is now the grade school gym, beginning at 8 o'clock. There will be an admission charge of 14 cents. Thought that was hilarious. And some of the people that I knew that were giving solos were a clarinet solo by Norman Axmeyer, a cornet solo by Joanne Churchill, later Harris, a vocal solo by Louise Smothers, later Lockridge, a neighbor lady who I grew up with down on Smoky Row, and a vocal solo by Jeanette Doherty, who was one of my mom's friends, and cornet solo by Joyce Miller Denslow, Dr. Larry's sister, a vocal solo by Doris Schaff, who was later Doris Brock from South English, and a vocal solo by Phyllis Wade, who was Libby's granddaughter. March 27th, 1946. Henry died on this date in 1933. It was nice and warm today. Everyone is cleaning their yards. The grass is about high enough to mow. Lena was here, and they're getting ready to move. Have begun the back room foundation for Roy and Stella, where Warrens now live. Henry Claypool was Libby's older brother. He's right here in this picture. And this also here is a picture of Libby when she was younger. Lena was the wife of her second son, Warren and Mike Wade. Here's Lena and Warren. Roy and Stella Wallace were her parents. You might remember Ray recently returned from the hospital and is now recovering. This here on this side is Roy, her dad, and this here is his brother Frank Wallace, who happened to be my great step-grandpa. LG, or Roy Wallace, has sold his 123-acre farm northeast of town to Marl Wallace and will retire to town, having purchased the Warren Wade property. Warren Wade has purchased the Marl Wallace property and will soon take possession. The Marl Wallaces will move to their farm in the near future. So everybody was trading houses that day. March 28, 1946. Still spring-like today. Had asparagus for supper. Earliest I've ever had asparagus, I think. I looked over the old lodge books, some are from Green Valley. I had a letter from Anna. Arlen has the chicken pox. Libby used to belong to the Rebecca Lodge at Green Valley, east of town, when she lived there. In her life, Libby will be a 60-year-old member of the lodge. Anna is her daughter in Texas, and Arlen Cray is her grandson with the chicken pox. March 29th, 1946. Mary Redseger was here in the p.m. and Miss McDonald in the evening. This is her friend, Trace McDonald. Gerald Newberry's little boy was seriously burned. Took him to Iowa City Hospital. March 30th, 1946. Heard today that the little boy died. He was nearly 4 years old. The 3-year-old boy who died was Lauren Newberry, the son of Gerald and Greta Newberry, who lived on a farm east of town. I found the story about it. He was survived by his parents, several sets of grandparents and great-grandparents, and brother Eldon Newberry. Later, Darrell, Lynette, and Carl Newberry would be born into the family. His great-grandmother, Clara Newberry, was one of Libby's friends, and Libby's high school granddaughter, Phyllis Wade, was one of Lauren's pallbearers. March 30th, 1946. Continued. Nice today, but cooler. Molly C. was here and had Flossie and Barbara's picture. Ronnie C. cleaned the trash from the yard and the garden. Hattie and Maud were here. Molly C. was Molly Claypool, the wife of Millard Claypool, who was the son of Livy's cousin, Wallace Claypool. Molly's daughter, Flossie, had married Winter West, and they had a daughter named Barbara West. Here's a picture of Flossie. She came back to town in the 1950s. Hattie Newberry Killian was her 55-year-old church friend, and Maud Claypool was the wife of Libby's nephew, Ray Claypool. Ronnie C. was Ronnie Claypool. He cleaned the trash out of the yard for Libby today. Ronnie was the great-grandson of Wallace Claypool through his son Bert Claypool and grandson Kenny Claypool. The Kenny Claypool family later lived at Watshire. Ronnie was a grade school child in 1946, and I knew him later in life as he was friends with my parents, and he and his wife would come down for the creamery picnic. He was a nice, sweet man, and he worked for the Cedar Rapids Post Office. March 31st, 1946. Today is Louise's birthday. Louise Claypool Long was Libby's niece. the daughter of her brother Benton Claypool, and the sister of my grandma Bertha Geringer. I was alone most of today. Suzanne was here a while. Russell went to church in the a.m. and to the funeral in the p.m. Ross M. wanted him to take some of the relatives in his car. He bought a new suit late last night. Hattie was here in the evening. Russell took his new car to the funeral for Lauren Newberry as the funeral director, Ross Mahana, asked him to take some of the relatives to the cemetery in his car. Lauren Newberry is buried in the North English Cemetery. Russell bought a new suit last night, probably in North English. Hattie Killian Newberry was Libby's friend and the great aunt of the 3-year-old little boy, Lauren Newberry. My featured person of the day is Opal Beorkrem. This picture from the wall of the History Center is one of the pictures that Dave Jackson had colorized. Opal Ballard Beorkrem Grove was a very special person. She was one of my Girl Scout leaders. She was always so sweet and nice to everyone. She worked alongside her husband Eldon at the Eldon's Food Market grocery store. She and Eldon bought the Clover Farm store further down on Main Street in the Hatter Building, or the old doctor's office building. And then they built the store where the History Center is today in 1951 and opened it for many years, operated it for many years, employing their own 4 daughters, Patty, Susan, Mary, and Debbie, as well as other local workers. After Eldon passed away, Opal later married Joe Grove from South English. Opal lived 97 years. I met Opal's niece, Louise Ballard Davis, recently, and she remarked how nice it was of Opal to take Louise into her home to stay when her mother was ill. Louise also remembers going on their boat for cruises on the Mississippi, and she said that the Beorkrems took off for the river whenever they got the chance. I remember very clearly the family taking me on a cruise on the Mississippi as a Girl Scout with the other little Girl Scouts. Another memory stands out for me was one time when I was with my mother in the grocery store line. That checkout was very near this same front door of the History Center where we're at today. The woman ahead of us did not have enough money to pay for the groceries that had just been rung up. Accompanying the women were several small children who were barefooted. Opal just waved the woman right on through on the line, not asking for any money. I was indignant with my own mother that was not right. Mom hushed me and got us out to the car, where I continued my tirade that those kids were just barefooted to get that sympathy from Opal. Later on in my life, as I grew older, I realized that Eldon and Opal did so very many nice things for our family, and that I should be ashamed that I talked about that way about others who were less fortunate. Opal was the daughter of John Newton Ballard Jr. and his wife Bertha Riffle Ballard. She's in the center of this picture. Opal was born on July 5, 1920, near North English, Iowa, and she was raised in the Hinkletown area and graduated from South English High School. Her siblings were Eunice Ballard Polton, Rena Ballard Summers, May Ballard Grove, Ruth Ballard Rachi, Ralph Ballard, Floyd Ballard, Dorothy Ballard, Elsie Ballard, and Iva Ballard Ewing. After her father's death, Opal's mother raised the children alone. Opal was remembered for being a wonderful mother, pie maker and cook, and caregiver to all ages. Her lifetime pleasure was serving as others. We will have more pictures of Opal another time, as Dave Jackson has lots of pictures of her from when she was interested in Hinkletown and the History Center. More about the creamery from the 1954 Centennial book. You'll notice I'm sitting in front of the picture of the creamery. The first creamery was established in May 1885 by the Nickel brothers and S.P. Childs on the east side of Bolin Avenue. Cream was hauled by covered wagon driven by horses or mules. Oliver Swink, great-grandfather of my friend Vicky Swink Ayers, was a cream hauler. Sammy Billingsley and C.B. Butler were butter makers. The English Valley Cooperative Creamery Association was established in 1931 with O.O. Hoskins as the manager and butter maker. The first year they made 194,137 pounds of butter, and by 1953, under the management of George Gilmore, 2,491,688 pounds were manufactured. The original board of directors were Frank Wallace, who was my step-great-grandpa after he married Grandpa Geringer's widowed mother, Roy Wallace, who was Lena Wade's father, O.O. Foss, Frank Bliss, Henley Norling, George Charles Bauer, Ralph King, S.S. Cobb, who was Glenn Cobb's father, Orville Fry, Newell Gibbons, Charles Markwell, and O.O. Hoskins, manager. The directors in 1955 were Gene Holden, David Gibbons, Orville Foss, Jim Kaiser, who was Kathy O'Rourke's dad, James Hodka, Harry Morse, Ed Morse, Homer Miller, Kenneth Snakenberg, and George Gilmore, manager. The Cream Haulers in 1955 were Pete Colbert, Bruce Holden, Keith Kirkpatrick, Kermit Cruson, Jack Lockridge, Jim Lockridge, Keith Schrader, and Norman Tibb Wilkerson. A Creamery Picnic has been an annual event every summer since this creamery was established in 1931. The first one was held in Gibbons Pasture Grove, southeast of town. That was written in the 1955 book, and the current town celebration is an offshoot of this event. Next week we'll talk about Art Carter and his dairy. Correspondence, etc. from January 4th, 2025. I talked to Jerry Lee Westfall, and she remembers the recipe for the turkey sandwiches. Jerry said, I was with the commercial club when we served those turkey sandwiches on Wednesday before Thanksgiving. The commercial club purchased the turkeys, and the school cafeteria cooks prepared them. They cooked, deboned, and ground the turkey. And then some broth and mayonnaise was mixed in. The club members fixed the sandwiches as they were needed. The commercial club chose this event to coincide with workers from Amana and the university coming home from work as school closing for the holiday. Prior to that, businesses had jars for people to sign their names, they were mixed up for the drawing. I think they gave away lots of turkeys, maybe around 25. Prior to that, and before my time and before freezers, I was told live turkeys were tossed from one of the buildings on Main Street. In my opinion, the sandwiches were the most popular. The commercial club was a great club to which all businesses belonged. With the help of every member, we had a lot of fun events. Thank you for your input on this, Jerry. It was wonderful to hear from you. My friend from grade school, Helen Kirkpatrick Sweetert from Colesburg, Iowa and Lake Placid, Florida, contacted my childhood friend Linda Claypool about my broadcast. Linda and I texted back and forth on Sunday night last week. She had left North English when she was 9 years old. Vicki Orndorff Johnson said, I enjoy your broadcast so much as usual. So, your grandfather and my grandfather knew each other. That's nice. It's interesting because I was talking to my granddaughter who was visiting about the North English Cemetery today. Barb Best Wright says, I remember playing Gilligan's Island down in that creek below our house where I believe the Smoky Road Trail is located. Mark Claypool says, each week you dive in deeper into the history of this community and I learn something new each week. I so remember the lumberyard going to see Santa. I look forward every week to going down memory lane once again. Thank you for everything you are doing. Pam Kavanaugh Shields says, great broadcast, Jackie. Love following your stories of our hometown, North English. I knew you had a large family, but I didn't realize how you were all connected. I will continue to follow you. Jude Kerr-Kriebel said, my dad, Homer Carr, talked a lot about where he thought the school should be built. He favored the new school being built centrally located about halfway between North English and South English. Rick Kavanaugh said, he remembers my dad's gas station well. This gas station is where Randy and I caught the bus to go to Fort Leonard Wood to visit Steve and Pam. Oh, the memories. Thanks for the great podcast, Jackie. Alice Flooring Stramer said, I remember my sister Rita Flooring Northup getting a silver dollar in her bag of goodies from Santa at the lumberyard when we were probably 9 and 10 years old. Yes, it was cold, and it seemed the walk was very long, but the bag of goodies was worth the wait. Since I was older, I only remember getting a turkey sandwich one time in the basement of the pharmacy building. It was delicious. Your research stirs so many memories of people, places, and events which are long suppressed. Thank you again for jogging our memories of good old North English. Nancy Evans was at the History Center last weekend making donations of family heirlooms, and I asked her to listen to my broadcasts on YouTube. She wanted to know if I would be finished with the diaries sometime, and I said I probably have enough diaries for the rest of my life. She said the Evans family owned a hardware store uptown, and Bob's grandmother kept a diary in the 1930s. I am anxious to see those diaries too. I lost 2 friends with English Valley's roots this week. Anna Gerard James from Millersburg was a longtime friend from my days at the Iowa County Genealogy Society. She was such a kind, jolly person who really loved history. At her funeral, I saw Roberta Vocal and Vicki Pope, both who are fans of my broadcast. Vicki Pope said that she remembers visiting the home of Aunt Minnie Claypool, Libby's only surviving sister-in-law on the Claypool side. Minnie's home was east of the current post office beside the hardware store in North English. Minnie Claypool's maiden name was Smart. Vicky's grandma, Charlotte Smart Bone, was Aunt Minnie's sister. The other person who passed away this week is Bobby Bursler, the son of my parents' longtime friends, Levon and Leona Bursler. Bobby was the grandson of Neva and Charles Morse in our 1946 diary. Bobby graduated in the class at English Valleys in 1981. Here's a picture of Bobby with his sister Bonita. We have now set up a channel on YouTube, and we've gotten over 300 hits on that. I wish you would invite you to subscribe, like, and share, and tell your friends about that. And we'll continue to be on Facebook each week. We're also, Scott Romine's working on the programs for this month, for this year, for 2025, and Scott Romine is also working on plans for the alumni reunion. We'll get back to you on all those things later. Have a good week.